The United Kingdom has decided to drop the introduction of vaccine passports, while the United States of America is pushing ahead.
I really do defend these in principle. I think it was right to set out in July that we could go forward with those measures. And actually, what has happened is, I mean, if you think about a year ago, where we were, last September, can you imagine if we'd had then COVID certification, we would have been able, with that tool, to keep open businesses that had been forced to close and were going through an absolutely wretched time. They would have been a total game changer, lifesaver last year. And so I think that they're important they're an important part of our repertoire. And it's great that loads of events have been working to use them. People have been making the system work. As I said earlier on, we may because of where the disease gets to, we may have to use them in a more thoroughgoing way. We reserve the right to come back to you and say we think that that's going to be necessary. And I do think the public understand that. They can see how it could work. There are plenty of other countries that are doing it right now. But at present, we don't think it's necessary to proceed on that basis. We think that we can keep going with all the stipulations that I mentioned and Chris reinforced that we're asking people to observe. We think that's the right balance given where the data is now. But you've got to be mindful that this disease does have a way of changing and moving. What is absolutely for certain is the vaccine's made a vast difference.
South Africa has also announced that it's looking at introducing the much talked about vaccine passports at a time where the sub-Sahara region is struggling with vaccines.
As the Africa CDC and the African Union is known that we do not encourage vaccine passports, I think, period. And the basis is simple, that we always want to ensure that people are vaccinated, that there is access to vaccines to everybody, then we can begin to implement vaccine passports. We are very concerned that if countries start imposing vaccine passports, it will further create inequities and worsen a very unprecedented and delicate position that we find ourselves in. So we are not encouraging vaccine passports across the continent and across the world.
The World Health Organization says vaccine passports will likely lead to inequality.
We don't want vaccine passports to be used as a precondition for travel because of lack of vaccine equity. It will be a tool to discriminate. It won't help. So at this time, it cannot be used as a passport, especially if it's going to be a condition for travel. But for the future, when vaccine coverage increases globally, it can be considered. And that's why we're helping countries who are working on vaccine passports so that we can have a uniform system when vaccine passport is needed and when it's time to use it.
A notion supported by the region.
According to the international health regulations, which is an agreement that member states have reached together, it is not to have a requirement of vaccination, proof of vaccination for international travel, except for a vaccine that is widely available. And I think, as we've discussed, these vaccines are anything but widely available. This is just a reminder that there's been a great deal of discussion about the international health regulations, if you like, mutual accountabilities of this club of member states who have reached an agreement as to how to manage the risk of the international spread of disease. And just to add that it seems that some of the protocols that have been put in place of testing, etc., seem to be sufficient to minimize the risk of transmission of the virus from international travel. So I would just add that reminder. It's not only that we'd like people to be kind and not do this, but they have agreed as member states to a principle of not applying passports for international travel unless the vaccine concerned is widely available globally.
Meanwhile, Africa CDC says they are hoping that they will be able to procure vaccines for the continent. Sophie Mukweli, SABC News, Johannesburg.